So I'm Kevin. I'm one of the co-founders of NextJump. I've been with the company a little under 20 years now. And this is Chris. He's one of the directors in our UK office. He's been with the company about 5 years. So today, what I'm going to talk to you about really is this notion that in order to really get to beyond budgeting, our thesis is that you need to invest in leadership development. And I think it came up this morning, it came up at the last talk, and one of the really interesting questions at the end was this whole, what would you do with your own money? And I think part of that is around situational awareness and building your own judgment. So we're going to go through some practical guide on how we've built our culture around how to help people make those situational judgments, and then that leads to leadership at every level of the organization. So just a little bit about NextJump. I know Henry mentioned it. We're $2.5 billion in e-commerce sales. Our day job is really around building e-commerce platforms for employees. And we have about 3.5 million customers here in the UK. But I think if you've Googled us or if you've heard of us probably since about 2012, the thing that really comes up often is around our investments in culture. And I think about 24 months ago, some professors from Harvard came and did this study on NextJump and really sort of dug deep into what we were doing, and they named us one of these three deliberately developmental organizations. And it's really shown from our kind of profitability and our revenue growth where investment in our people has led to a transformational change in our business. So that's really what NextJump is about. So understanding the problem that we're going to cover today is really this slide is about the kind of transformation in where we've come from and where we're going to in terms of how decisions are made at organizations. So if you look at it from the perspective of the kind of old school top-down management, you could have a decision made at the top and then middle management and workers would execute. But today, in a kind of if you're either a disruptor or you're being disrupted, the idea is that you need to push as much decision-making capability down to the lowest level of your organization as possible. But the real question is, how do you go about doing that? What's the method that you can use to actually have your employees making decisions? And there are two problems that come about. So the first one, I don't know if anyone's seen behavior like this at their own organization. Every time I see this slide, I want to crawl into the slide and move that tree out of the road. And it seems obvious. It seems like the obvious choice, but the driver made a conscious decision to do this. And it was about sort of doing his job versus doing the right thing, and I think that came up before as well. And so really looking at the root cause of what happened when he came to that point and made that decision is really what today's talk is going to be about. The second thing that we've seen, and I'm just going to take a minute to read this. This is directly from the book. It's about the lying, hiding, faking problem that happens probably at every organization. And most people are doing a second job. No one is paying for them. And they're spending time and energy covering their weaknesses, managing other people's favorable impression of them, showing themselves to their best advantage, playing politics. And in many organizations, you start out your career with a lie, because the interview process, when you come into an organization, you're taught. Even at university, and we see this all the time, you have to put your best self forward. You have to kind of hide your weaknesses. And then that happens throughout your career, where there are actually books, it's all about politics. These books that are telling you how to navigate an organizational structure. So just imagine for a minute if you could take that extra job that you're doing and maybe reduce it by half. Maybe you still kind of do some lying, hiding, faking, but if you were to reduce that job by half, how much more energy you would have to be able to invest into the things that are important about your job. So it's about creating an environment where there's a safety to fail, and so those are the two key things that really lead to this whole issue around this leadership is decision making, and companies traditionally spend a lot of resources, and they're really good at training hard skills. How do you use Excel? How do you code in Java? How do you go through a sales process? Where companies are historically weak is in training judgment calls, which are really the key to leadership and decision, and those are emotional skills. They're not hard skills like Excel. So that's what the programs that we have are going to introduce. And if you just take, I guess, about 3 minutes, this is the first table topic. So what I'd like you to talk about is, do you see similar issues at your organization? The whole idea of millennials entering the workplace and wanting the additional levels of responsibility, that renter versus owner, the lying and hiding, and then the emotional decision making. So if you, as a table, kind of come to a consensus, is this actually one of the problems that you're facing as an organization?
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the road to self-awareness. Sounds like quite a broad and interesting topic, or scary topic for some people. But it's all around, how do you build a culture within your organization that can allow you to teach the right decision making? How can you teach situational judgment, so when it comes to responsibilities such as budgeting, such as people-based decisions, you can trust that you've put the frameworks in place that mean that you can trust your employees to do the right thing. So when you think of two situations, situation A, it's Sunday afternoon, you've achieved all your goals for the week, there's literally nothing you need to do for the rest of the week, you've got a sense of calm, you're just sat on the sofa, just ready for the world. And then compare that to situation B, where you're in the car, you're on the way for your mother-in-law's 60th birthday, you have got 2 kids in the back of your car, one of them has a fever, they're screaming, your wife is annoyed at you because you didn't fix that leak that you have on the sink, and so you're just not in a great place at that particular moment. Now, imagine if a judgment call or a decision comes in that you have to make. How you make that decision is going to be quite different depending whether you are in situation A, where you've very level-headed, you're ready to, you can sort of think about previous times that you might have made similar situations, you can reflect on mistakes you might have made, but compare that to situation B, where you're just sat in the car wishing that you just didn't exist. But realistically, the decision has to be made. Now, they might sound like fairly extreme examples, but every day in your workplace, there'll be different things that come in, different emails you get, different meetings you have, and then you're going to have to go into to make decisions based on a number of different things, and how you make those decisions could often be quite different. How you operate outside of stress can be quite different to how you operate during stress. And what we teach at NextJump is very much, how do you get self-awareness for the sort of person that you are when you are under stress, and the sort of decisions you make, because 9 times out of 10, probably 10 times out of 10, the decisions you make under stress are probably going to be the wrong ones. So how do we do this? So has anyone heard of Jim Lear, just out of interest? He's basically a world-class coach. He runs a Human Performance Institute in Florida, but he's essentially coached pretty much everyone in the sporting world, from Andre Agassi to top athletes to Olympians. And instead of focusing on the more technical sports-based skills, he very much focuses on the emotional training. And NextJump's been working with him for a number of years, and what we've really learned from him is that character is a muscle. And like all muscles, it can be exercised and strengthened. So for example, people might typically say, I'm just not a patient person, that's just not in my character. But that's not true. If you want to become a more patient person, you can deliberately put yourself into situations where you can practice more patience. You can stand in more queues, or you can do things like that. That might make you slightly more comfortable when it comes to sort of growing your patience. Now, we worked with Jim a couple of years ago around these idea of character muscles. And originally, when we started working with him, there were 23 there's sort of spectrums. So 23 different pairs of character muscles that one might be patience, one might be impatience, one might be optimism, one might be pessimism. And you go through the list and you'd sort of say, okay, during stress, typically I would fall here on the spectrum of this one, here on that one. And suddenly it left people being like, I don't really know who I am anymore because there's 23 pairs of character muscles and they all seem quite different. But actually, what we found was that you can reduce these character muscles to two, what we call the mother of all character muscles, which are you more arrogant or are you more insecure during periods of stress? So my name is Chris and I am arrogant. And then this is Kevin and he is more on the insecure side. Now, what does that mean? So during stress, I will typically be the first person to jump in. I'll typically speak first in the meeting. I'll typically jump to a solution. And try and get things sorted when I have to make a decision under stress. Whereas this is quite different to what my colleague Kevin would do. He won't mind me saying he is typically one of the last few people to speak. He will typically allow others to take the lead in stressful situations. And also, he's more likely to become paralyzed when it comes to actually making the decision. And what we found is that across our entire organization, we really can class people into, are they more arrogant during stress or are they more insecure during stress? And then what that allows people to do is to begin to understand, okay, what do I need to practice? How do I need to, now that I'm getting this element of self-awareness, what do I need to do so that the next time a stressful situation comes up and I might have to make a decision, I know that typically I'm more likely to jump to the solution when in actual fact I should behave more like Kevin does and consider all options before making that decision. Now, the way that we've, self-awareness is a hard exercise and it's often something that you won't be able to do on your own. Typically, you will have many different blind spots when it comes to how you behave, things that you don't even realize that you're doing. So one of the frameworks that we've really created to allow people to become, to make better decisions when it comes to anything from people-based decisions to strategy-based decisions to finance-based decisions is we've paired every single person in the organization up into something that we call talking partners. So I don't know about any of you, but what I found is as you get more responsibility, as more people rely on you to make decisions and to make calls, unless you have someone that you're talking through your decision-making process with, you can feel quite isolated when it comes to making those decisions, particularly when you know people are relying on you. The talking partner framework really is one that allows us to be able to talk through the different fear narratives that we might have when it comes to making decisions. It's one that we treat talking partners, so Kevin and I are talking partners. We within the organization are very much treated as decision-making machines together. Now, because I'm more on the arrogant side and because Kevin is more on the insecure side, he is able to see different, the sort of blind spots that I currently have. He's able to show me different points of view that I might not typically make when I'm making a decision on my own. And the whole talking partner concept is one where on a very regular basis, literally every day, Kevin and I meet. And the way that it works is that first of all, we will vent. So for example, imagine that you have this really big pitch or you have this really big meeting where you're putting forward a proposal and you wake up and you realize that you've got absolutely no hot water in your shower and you realize that you get to the train station, you've just missed a train. When you finally get on the train, there's so many different delays. By the time you get in, you are just frustrated. And now you're expected to go straight into that meeting and make that proposal, and you have all these other things going on in your head, and what we call emotionally tilting. Now, what we do in an organization, or what we do every day at an organization level is I will go in and I will first of all meet with Kevin and I will just vent. I will rant about my morning. I will rant about all the things that I have on my plate. I will talk about the things that I'm scared of. I'll talk about the things I'm pissed off at, and he will do exactly the same to me as well. And then only through that do we really get to the truth and the understanding of what it is that is going on. So for example, he might say to me, Chris, you see how the way that you are approaching this situation is exactly the same as you've been approaching this for the last sort of 4 months. Unless you change something there, you're probably going to end up in the same outcome. And the idea, the most important part of the talking partner framework that we have is this concept of work. So after we've sort of vented out everything that we have, after we've talked it all through, we can then say, okay, how are we now going to go into this proposal and how we're going to smash it? And you enter into that meeting, you enter into that conversation so much more relaxed and clear in terms of your point of view that you're able to make much clearer decisions and have much more clarity. The other thing that we've set up that we are sort of consulting many different companies to do the same is it's called a situational workshop. Now, within the NextJump's business, we've basically got rid of management meetings. We found that it's much better to teach your employees situational judgment and to help them with their own self-awareness journey. So for example, you've all heard this example of don't just give a man a fish, teach a man a fish. But how do you take that framework and you bring it into your organization so that when it comes to you may have people making consistent decisions when it comes to budgeting or things like that. You want to make sure that they've learned from potentially mistakes in the past or approaches that they've done where it hasn't worked particularly well, so that they have a greater understanding of what went wrong or what they could have tried so that when the next opportunity comes up, they have this understanding and they know that they can try something different. So we find that situational workshops are basically a means to teach judgment. And how does it work? So, as I mentioned, myself and Kevin, we are talking partners at NextJump, which we are two of the more senior talking partners in the UK office, which means that every 2 weeks, we run a meeting, it's 1 hour long, and we have 2 pairs of talking partners, so 4 other people who are more junior than us coming along, and they will prepare a situation where something hasn't necessarily gone the way that they expected. So they might have tried something and not got the outcome they thought they would, or they might have just found that they've been consistently worrying about this one topic and it's showing up all over the place for them. And so what we will do is we will help them notice patterns in their behavior. So for example, we might find that Graham, who's one of our software engineers, he's currently working on being a lot more transparent with what he's doing and the decisions that he's making. And he might talk about something he's doing on a coding project, or he might talk about something that he's been doing on recruitment, as he's been supporting the recruitment effort in the UK. And he might not immediately see that actually his approach and the decision making he's making is identical in both situations. And it's up to us as his situational workshop leads to be able to help him see those patterns so that he can understand what he could potentially do and consider other approaches when it comes to making similar decisions in other areas of his job. So what this basically means is, because we have Kevin and I giving a situational workshop to 2 groups of talking partners, and they will also go on to give situational workshops to people more junior than them, we have an organization which is basically coaching at scale. And this starts right at the top with our co-CEOs in New York, who actually run Kevin and I's situational workshops. So they're coaching us on situational judgment and decision making, and then we're coaching the next level, and the next level we're then coaching the people below. And it's a really effective way of helping the entire organization better understand what are good judgment calls that they're making, but also what are the bad judgment calls that they're making, uncovering the patterns in that decision-making process, and then work out ways to move forward as a pair, because ultimately, as a talking partner, you are accountable to the other talking partner's success.
If you're using the business, the revenue-producing element of your business as a training ground, then there could be some danger in that. So what we've done is we've developed a model where we've picked initiatives that we classify as above below a hole in the ship, below the waterline, the ship sinks. If you blow a hole in the water above the waterline, the ship might take some damage, but it's not going to sink. So that in essence is how we divide the initiatives, and predominantly where the training goes on in terms of where you're practicing as an individual and where you're bringing the situations is in the cultural initiatives. So as an example, I'm currently running NextJump's Adopt a School program here in the UK. Now, while we do feel like Adopt a School is a very important initiative for NextJump, it isn't one of our revenue-producing initiatives. So it gives me more of latitude to fail and to look into why I made the decisions that I did. So for myself, I'm working on setting context and growing a vision, and with Adopt a School, I can do that in a much sort of bigger way without impacting NextJump's revenue. So that's where, if you're working through a situational workshop like Chris was talking about, the situations that people are bringing in are almost always very similar and related to one another. So the decisions that you're making in your home life, the decisions you're making when you're working out in the gym, the decisions that you're making when you're working on a volunteer initiative, the decisions that you're making when you're working on a business initiative have a pattern to them. And the pattern is that you're taking yourself with you to every one of those decisions. And the job of your co-mentor, the talking partner, and the situational workshop is to really identify what that pattern is and help you get to the root cause. And so then you can work on ways to change it. And like Chris said, that could be something as simple as, if you're working on patients, you walk into the slowest queue or you walk behind people on the street. If you're working on kind of more transparency, maybe you're sending a daily update instead of a weekly update. So those are the kinds of practices that we're talking about, because really, I think 95% of what you do every day, you're on autopilot. And then there's that 5% that you can kind of maneuver and change. And it's the little things, those micro adjustments, that pay dividends over the longer period of time. So this is the model that we use for the cultural initiatives, the things that we have that are above the waterline. And this can be something as simple as running the weekly drinks at our company, or to running the company holiday party, or to making sure that the fridges are stocked with healthy foods. Each initiative like that has a captain, and then potentially has some people that are helping with it, called the left hand and a right hand, and then there's a coach. And so the job of the captain is to run the initiative. And the captain is the one who's practicing something about themselves. And the coach is there because they have run the initiative before, and they're helping the captain with those decisions. And then the left hand and the right hand then kind of feed in and become the captain at a later date. So the idea here is that this is not the most efficient way to run the company holiday party. The most efficient way is to give it to the same person year after year after year. However, from our perspective, it's a missed opportunity to train leadership skills into a junior member of staff who can then take those same skills and help someone else kind of grow their own skills. So while this flow model is not meant to be an uber efficient way to run a company, it's meant to train people in a way where they can fail, and then they can take that failure and learn from it in a safe environment. So the last table topic is around, if you look at these programs that we talked about today, these are programs that we feel and we know have scaled to other organizations. What obstacles would you see in adopting some of these at your own organization? And these include something like a talking partners, where it's you can literally start with 2 or 4 people, situational workshops, or using other cultural initiatives as a practice ground.